Now, I've seen a few people this week suggesting what would have happened or speculating on what would have happened if Kell had never taken the Golovkin fight. Obviously, a couple of weights up at the time. We know what happened since with the back-to-back injuries against Golovkin and Spence. What's your kind of perspective on that? Could his career have panned out a bit differently?
No, I think, look, he had to take that fight. People say, oh, it ruined his career. But the thing what was ruining his career was not getting the fights that he wanted, the Danny Garcias, Keith Thurman, those type of fights, because they were all ringside when Kell booked Sean Porter. I think they were all expecting that Porter was going to win. And when Kell beat Porter, they all kind of like, you could see that thinking that weren't supposed to happen, because they'd never really seen Kell Brook at his peak. They'd seen him in life and death with certain fighters, and a bit like, not like Bivol really, but nobody really expected Bivol to beat Canelo. But Kell Brook was never performing at his 100% best, really, before he boxed Sean Porter. And for Sean Porter, he did. And I think the other guys didn't want any part of that. So the opportunities weren't coming for Kell. He would have been sat around waiting for these big fights. He was getting bored boxing the Jojo Dans and the Beziers. He didn't want to be fighting those type of guys. He needed a challenge, and he needed to be fearful of who he was fighting. And, he relished the challenge against Golovkin. And look, people say I'm mad. I honestly believe that Kell Brook, if he hadn't got the eye socket, I don't think Golovkin was 100% right on that night. But I think Kell Brook, it wasn't beyond possibility of him beating Golovkin, and people say, oh, absolutely no chance. But he could have beat Golovkin. He didn't get a massive amount of notice for that fight because it was quite, on the fly when Eddie mentioned it. Maybe a bit more preparation and being a bit lighter coming into that fight might have made a difference. But Kell came out afterwards and said, you know what, when I got stopped apart from the idea, because the shots what he was throwing in was skimming me. He says they were losing power because I think I'd taken his best shots early on. But that's, all speculation, and he got a good payday from it. And don't forget, he came back, trained, boxed Spence, months later. Get fair play to him for that. Because if you look at, other fighters who've had their eye sockets damaged, have never come back. They never survived one, let alone two, like Kell did. So I think Kell had to do that for his own sanity to keep himself in the mix. And he was still world champion. He boxed Spence. And I do believe, again, certain things in that camp building up to that fight, injury and illness, he got into that fight at 80%. If he'd have been 100%, 95%, I do believe that he would have beat Spence. And look what Spencer's doing now to everybody. You know what I mean? So I sometimes kick myself because I think, and he does, thinking, well, what if? But that's how boxing pans out. He got his other eye socket done. I think he was in front at the time, and it still didn't deter him. He still came back. So he's had to come through a lot of adversity in his career, to get where he's got. So I think he'll be known as the fighter who took the challenges. I never shied away from anybody because he never did. So that kind of sums up the Golovkin situation. That was a fight what he made the money on, where he would never have to fight again, and that's what it's all about, Danny. That. No good having all the belts on the mantelpiece. If your skin, look how many fighters end up broke. You're putting your life and your health at risk. You've got to have something to show for the end of it. You've got to have the money, so that in later life you're not struggling and being in a down and out place like so many fighters are.
Do you see that as part of your responsibility? Because I know your dad did. That they're well looked after, as well as the fact that they're trained well.
Yeah, of course, because, my dad always used to say to me, and I'll go back to the Golovkin fight, when I'm screaming, trying to throw the towel in, and the referee's so engrossed in what's happening, you're not supposed to throw the towel into the ring. You're supposed to wave it. I'd say throw it at his feet. But I already knew a few rounds before that Kell was, there's something wrong with him from what he was telling me. But, he was doing all right. I thought, keep him for a few more rounds, see what happens. But ultimately, you've got 20,000 people screaming. And at the end, they're all booing and shouting and calling. I'm not concerned because, these people, I don't know these people. Kell Brook, I've known him since a 10-year-old child. And you've got that responsibility. You've got to have that responsibility, because if it was my child, I want him looking after in the same way. And my dad used to say to me, Dominic, imagine these fighters are your kids. What would you do? What would you do in that situation? I have had parents saying to me, of fighters, they're going to go out on the shield and they're going to do this, and they've got all that, it's boxing, you're going to get and I'm thinking to myself, this is the parents talking here. And like, yeah, whatever. Like at the end of the day, yeah, they might want to make that decision, but it's my responsibility because the most fighters I've ever trained have never, wanted to quit. They've, especially Kell Brook. Even afterwards, he was questioning my decision to pull him out of the Golovkin fight until he got the scans, and the surgeon said, a few more punches on that, you'd have probably been finished. Your career would have probably been finished. So, in hindsight, I made the right choice. And that's the way I look at all my fighters. Boxing's a sport. When I hear the likes of Eubanks and his dad saying, oh, you're in there to die and it's a do or die situation. No, it's not. It's a sport. You're not there to get killed. So, that's my responsibility. That's the way we were brought up. And it'll always be the same. That no win is worth anybody's health or life in boxing, and anybody tells you any different, they're just talking ridiculous.